Hello everyone. In today's tutorial, we are diving into the complete life cycle of building a professional AR invoice report in Oracle Fusion. Here we will see how to transform raw data into polished reports through three key steps. First, we will map the critical database relationships, your SQL foundation. Next, we will structure the data models using master detail groups and define smart parameters. Finally, we will solve the common layout issues like dynamic page breaks and conditional logos. Stick around and I will show you how to make clean reports that will boost adoption rates. Let's get started. The process begins with logging into Oracle Cloud Fusion. You will need access to receivables modules which require receivable manager role assigned to your user account. Navigate to Accounts Receivables and then Billing. You can open a specific Accounts Receivables invoice, and this hands-on approach helps us understand exactly which database tables are affected. Now let's understand the core database tables and relationships. The essential database tables are the primary table RA Customer TRX All. This is our foundation, and this primary table holds all the transaction and invoice information. The key columns here are TRX number, org ID, batch source ID, customer TRX type ID, primary sales rep ID, and terms ID. And we have supporting table that will help us complete the picture, which are HR organization units, RA batch sources all, RA customer transaction types all, RA sales reps all. There is a note that we need to keep in our mind. It's about the translated tables. RA terms TL is a translated view and it stores data for multiple languages. For example, language equal to US. That is a condition that we will have to add in our SQL query. This will avoid retrieving unnecessary rows and ensure you get relevant data for your specific locale. Let's move on to understand the TCA architecture. This is fundamental to understanding customer relationship in Oracle Fusion. The relationship is straightforward. Every customer and supplier is created as a party in HZ parties table. Customer account information lives in HZ customer accounts, and while site information is stored across HZ customer account sites all and HZ customer site users all. The customer account links to the site accounts through customer account ID, and the sites link to the site users through customer account site ID. The site use code column differentiates between the bill to and the ship to sites. Invoice header and line relationships. For invoice processing, RA customer TRX all serves as our header table, and the invoice line details are stored in the RA customer transaction lines all. They are linked through customer TRX ID through a one-to-many relationship. Let's move on to the critical phase of structuring our data model. The aspect of designing invoice report, especially the master detail report, is correctly identifying and segregating data into two distinct groups. The master group, which is G1, this group contains the data which is unique to the entire report and does not repeat per line item. Think of this as your header level information. The examples are invoice number, business unit, transaction source, sales representatives, payment terms, due date, account number, and status. The detail group or G2, this is your lines group. It contains data that repeats for each line item within the invoice. Example, product or services. This will create a new record in this group. Next, let's define the essential parameters. We need to establish three key parameters. Parameter 1 and 2 is invoice number from and to. Parameter 3 is customer name. We need to filter by customer, but here is a challenge. Not every party in the system is actually a customer. We are looking for party names that exist as actual customers. A party should have at least one customer account to be considered as a customer. Why? Because the parties table doesn't only contain the customers, it also houses suppliers, bank accounts, and other user information. For this reason, we are specifically targeting parties that have customer accounts. Now let's resolve some critical data model errors. A significant obstacle that often prevents the report from running properly is you might encounter an invalid parameter requested error. And the solution is to dynamically pick up the organizational ID based on the logged in user's context. Layout design and RTF template structure. It is time to dive into the visual design aspect, creating our RTF template layout. So before we begin designing our layout, we need to export the sample XML data from our data model. Now let's look into the layout segmentation strategy. The report is conceptually divided into 3 distinct sections. Master data section, which contains all your header level information like company logo, address, invoice details like invoice number, invoice date, bill to and ship to information. The detailed data section, this is your line section, and it contains information about individual line items such as item code, description, quantity and unit price. Then comes the summary section. This includes the total invoice amount or subtotal. Building with a table-based layout. We need to create 2 separate table structures. One is for the master data and one is for the child or the detailed data. Static versus dynamic data implementation. Static data includes information like company address or fixed instructions. These are manually typed directly into the layout. And the dynamic data, it contains the placeholders for data retrieved from our XML. This includes elements like invoice number, customer name, item description, etc. Implementing loops for master detailed report. For master detailed report, loops are essential to correctly display repeating data. Outer loop for each G1. This loop starts at the very beginning of the master data and ends after the entire report section is complete. Inner loop, which is G2, this is placed within the detail section and it iterates through each line item associated with the current master record. XML tags corresponding to your data model fields are dragged and dropped into their respective positions. A common issue and its solution, let's discuss that now. The missing lines or the detailed data. This is probably the most frequent issue developers face. The failure to display the detailed lines is often due to the incorrect group names in the for each loop or issues with the XML data structure itself. Always remember to test your template with the various data scenarios like a single line invoice or a multiple line invoice, long descriptions that might wrap. This testing will save you countless hours of revisions which might be required later. Resolving layout problems, page breaks and repeating headers. There are 2 primary problems that every report developer encounters. The first challenge is controlling the page breaks for individual records, and the second challenge is repeating the header information across the pages. For controlling the page breaks, we have 2 proven methods. One is using for each section. When you place the for each section tag around the content of each record, it instructs the reports to move to a new page after completing the rendering of that record. Method 2 is split by page break with for each. This method involves explicitly inserting a split by page break command before the end for each tag. Here we can see how method 1 becomes superior because split by page break method does not ensure automatically the repeating header happens on the subsequent pages. For a repeating header, we have a template solution. So let's imagine a scenario where an invoice has more than 20 or 30 lines. It will naturally spill over to subsequent pages. Here's what typically happens when the same invoice number continues onto the second page, the header information doesn't repeat. So the user looking at the second page may not understand what invoice number they are viewing. The solution involves defining the header section that needs to be repeated as a template and then calling the template within the main header section of your report. Here is a step-by-step implementation. First step is to declare your template. Whatever section you want to repeat, your header information needs to be declared as a template. This creates a reusable element. Next step is to call the template. Now go to your main header section and simply call this template. You can use the syntax as call header main or call inline. Advanced layout controls, limiting rows per page. This is a game changer for report readability and professional presentation. Your reports often contain a large number of lines per header record, making it difficult to read. Users struggle with invoices that have 50 or 100 line items all crammed into pages without logical breaks. The fundamental concept is we need to execute a page break after a predefined number of lines. However, implementing this requires a mechanism to track the current line's position and trigger the break when our desired limit is reached. This is where Oracle's XSLT capabilities comes in, giving us tools to create dynamic page breaks. So let's start with the foundation. We need to declare variables. We need variables to store our desired number of lines per page and later to store the total number of lines in our dataset. The syntax is xdoXSLT set variable. This declares a variable called the lines page with a value of 10. Next, we need to retrieve the variable values. For this, we use the syntax xdoXSLT get variable. This will return the value we store in the variable lines page. We need a tracking current line position function. We need to know exactly which line we are currently processing. For this, Oracle has provided us with position function. The position function returns the current line number within the current group. 1 for first line, 2 for second, and so on. This function is absolutely critical for determining when to trigger our page break. For implementing conditional page breaks, we use modulo logic. Modulo logic determines when to break the pages. The core condition is if position mode of xdoXSLT get variable is equal to 0. This calculates the remainder and the current line number is divided by our lines page variable. When the remainder is 0, it means the current line is a perfect multiple of our lines page value. For example, if the lines page is 6, we get remainder of 0 at line number 6, 12, 18, etc. This is exactly where we want our page breaks to occur. The page break syntax we are using is Excel attribute break before page. Now let's address another issue, which is last page break issue. The modulo logic can trigger an unnecessary page break after the last line if your total number of lines is a perfect multiple of the lines page. For example, if we have 20 lines with a 10 line limit, you will get a page break after the line 20, creating an unwanted blank third page. So here we introduce an additional variable to track the total number of lines in our group, which is xdoXSLT set variable total lines. The count of group inner group name function, this counts all the records within your inner group, essentially all of your line items. Now we will use the modified condition, and this will ensure that the page break is not executed if the current position equals the total number of lines, preventing the unwanted blank page. This technique transforms your reports and users can focus on manageable chunks of data, making analysis more efficient. Dynamic subtemplates and conditional logo display. We will explore one of the most important feature in report design, which is dynamic subtemplate. Instead of creating multiple versions of the same report for different business units, you can build one template that dynamically adapts its content. The main template must have two essential sections that work together. One is the import section. This section defines the exact location of your subtemplate, and the call section. This section actually executes the subtemplate when it is needed. The import syntax varies significantly based on where you upload your subtemplate in the publisher catalog. For the shared folder placement, the syntax is it will include path after the shared. For my folders placement, the system will look for the subtemplate in your user specific place, so we need to use the negation symbol. For local machine testing, when you are testing locally without uploading to the catalog, the syntax changes, and this will include the drive name /path. Next, let's look into using subtemplates for conditional display of elements like logos. Your subtemplate must define parameters using this syntax: parameter, parameter name, default value. A default value is mandatory. Now, we can use conditional logic. Inside your subtemplate, you use if condition to display different elements based on the parameters assigned value. This creates a branching logic within your subtemplate. Next is calling the subtemplate with the parameters from within main template. The main template uses the syntax as parameter name equals column name, and this dynamically assigns the actual value to your subtemplate's parameter. Thanks for following along with this deep dive into AR invoice reporting. I hope these techniques helps you build more professional, user-friendly reports that your organization will actually want to use.